the day the sky turned black. The Velorian Empire did not invade. It eradicated. For 7 centuries, its doctrine had remained unchanged, full force deployment only. No probing strikes. No negotiations once war was declared. When Velorian banners appeared in orbit, it meant the end of a civilization's sovereignty. Sometimes its species. 700 conquered systems stood as proof. So when the Galactic Council's deep-range observatories detected 12,000 Velorian warships translating into Sol's outer boundary, the chamber fell into a silence usually reserved for extinction notices. Earth had been part of the galactic community for only 4 decades. A death world by classification. High gravity, violent weather, apex predators, endless wars. The Council had debated for years whether humanity was dangerously unstable or merely young. Now the debate no longer mattered. They've deployed a primary armada, an observer whispered as tactical projections filled the chamber. Crimson icons flooded the Sol system map like a spreading infection. Dreadnoughts the size of small moons. Siege platforms. Carrier swarms. Planet cracker vessels positioned at the rear. No empire sent that formation unless annihilation was intended. They didn't even send a demand for surrender, another delegate murmured. They never do, replied a third. Admiral Cale Varix of the Velorian Supreme Armada stood upon the command dais of the Vindicator Ascendant, gazing at the blue-green sphere rotating below. Earth, a world rich in water and biomass, fractured politically, militarily outdated by imperial standards. Its orbital infrastructure was cluttered but unimpressive. No visible shield lattice. No heavy defensive ring. Primitive. Scans confirm no unified planetary defense grid, reported Tactical Prime. Localized weapon arrays only. Nuclear stockpiles detected. Kinetic rail systems minimal. Varix allowed himself a thin smile. They still divide themselves into nations? He asked. Yes, Admiral. How quaint. The Velorian way was clarity through dominance, unity through obedience. Earth's constant internal conflicts were well documented. Regional disputes, economic rivalries, military posturing among themselves. A species that could not fully unite was no threat to one that had long ago eradicated dissent. Broadcast invasion declaration, Varix ordered. The transmission echoed across Earth satellites and military frequencies. By decree of the Velorian Empire, this system is hereby annexed. Submit planetary governance for integration or be cleansed. On Earth, emergency sirens wailed in cities from Tokyo to Lagos, New York to Karachi. News networks cut into programming. Civilian satellites pivoted toward the sky, capturing the impossible sight, dark shapes eclipsing stars. The sky was filling with metal. Inside the United Nations Orbital Defense Command beneath Geneva, General Elena Marquez stood before a wall of live projections. 12,000 red signatures. Confirmed. Around her, officers worked in disciplined silence. No shouting, no panic, just rapid calculations and synchronized communication streams flowing between continents. Evacuation protocols? She asked calmly. Underground shelters at 70% capacity and rising, replied operations. Global military coordination at full integration. Integration. The word still felt strange after centuries of rivalry. But the moment Velorian ships crossed the Oort cloud, something fundamental had shifted. Borders became irrelevant. Flags became ceremonial. Humanity did not have the luxury of division anymore. A communications officer turned. They've issued annexation terms. Marquez didn't ask what they were. Prepare response. The transmission sent from Earth was simple. No flourish. No threats. You are entering a sovereign defense zone. You have been warned. Across the Sol system, Velorian ships registered the reply. On the Vindicator Ascendant, Admiral Varix laughed softly. They issue warnings, he mused. Charming. Shall we begin orbital suppression? Tactical Prime asked. Varix studied Earth one final time. Blue oceans, swirling clouds, artificial lights glowing along its darkened hemisphere. a world unaware that its history was about to end. Yes, he said. Begin planetary suppression. Velorian siege cruisers shifted formation. Energy capacitors hummed as they built toward discharge. Planetary bombardment protocols synchronized across thousands of vessels. Plasma lances aligned. Graviton torpedoes primed. On Earth, satellites detected the energy spike. Impact window, Marquez asked. 32 seconds. She nodded once. Authorize Phase 1. Deep beneath Earth's crust, systems older than the current generation activated. On the far side of the moon, dormant structures powered on silently. Within asteroid belts cataloged as commercial mining zones, encrypted signals cascaded through hidden networks. But none of it was visible yet. To the Velorians, Earth still looked exposed. Fire. The Armada unleashed its opening strike. From orbit, beams of concentrated stellar fury lanced toward the planet. Torpedoes bent space as they accelerated. Enough force to fracture continents, to boil oceans. On Earth's surface, civilians watched streaks of unnatural light descend through the atmosphere. Then something impossible happened. The bombardment did not reach the ground. At approximately 80 kilometers above sea level, the first plasma lance struck and dispersed. A ripple flashed across the sky, faint, geometric, almost invisible, before fading again. The second strike hit the same unseen barrier. Then the third. Across the planet, brilliant auroras erupted in patterns no natural phenomenon could produce. Lines of light curved along magnetic arcs, forming a lattice that shimmered for only fractions of a second before vanishing. Admiral, Tactical Prime, said carefully, planetary energy absorption detected. Varix frowned. Absorption? Our weapons are not penetrating. Another volley fired. Again, the strikes dissolved into shimmering distortions. Below, Earth remained intact. No burning cities. No fractured crust. Only swirling clouds, and something new beneath them. Across orbit, thousands of objects previously cataloged as inert debris adjusted position simultaneously. Asteroids rotated, revealing metallic surfaces beneath their rocky camouflage. Solar satellites unfolded like mechanical flowers. Lunar installations powered to life, their silhouettes shifting against the gray horizon. On the Velorian tactical display, hundreds, then thousands, of new signatures appeared. Varix's smile faded. What, he asked slowly, are we seeing? On Earth, General Marquez exhaled quietly as confirmation lights turned green across her command board. Phase 1 complete. Admiral, Tactical Prime said, voice no longer steady. The planet is deploying. Outside the Vindicator Ascendant, space itself seemed to awaken. The invasion had begun. Humanity's response was about to follow. The longest 5 minutes in galactic history. Admiral Kale Varix had overseen the destruction of 23 civilizations. He had watched orbital rings shatter like brittle glass. He had seen oceans vaporized into planetary-scale storms. He had signed extinction warrants without hesitation. He had never seen a world absorb a full Velorian bombardment and remain intact. Status report, he demanded. Tactical Prime's hands moved rapidly across the holographic interface. Initial volley expended. 0 confirmed surface impact. Planetary shield configuration remains undefined. Undefined. Varix snapped. We cannot detect a conventional energy barrier. The dispersal field appears to be embedded within the planet's magnetosphere. Varix stared at Earth. The auroras had faded. The blue planet rotated peacefully, almost mockingly serene. Then his tactical display bloomed with new warnings. Multiple objects altering trajectory, a sensor officer shouted. Asteroid belt signatures, velocity increasing. On screen, would have been categorized as lifeless mining debris shifted into tight formation patterns. Rocky exteriors split apart, shedding camouflage to reveal polished metallic cores lined with massive electromagnetic rails. They concealed weapons in their resource fields, Tactical Prime whispered. Before Varix could respond, The first counterstrike came. A flash of blinding white erupted from the lunar surface. The projectile did not glow like plasma. It did not burn like antimatter. It was simple, brutal physics, tungsten accelerated to a fraction of light speed. The Velorian cruiser, Sovereign Claw, ceased to exist. There was no explosion in the traditional sense. One moment, it occupied space. The next, it was a dispersing cloud of incandescent fragments. Impact origin. Lunar mass driver. Sensors confirmed. Then a second flash. Another cruiser vanished. Across the Armada, warning signals cascaded. Deploy interception grids. Varix barked. Too slow. From the asteroid belt, hundreds of rail platforms fired in synchronized sequence. Kinetic rods streaked through space, nearly invisible against the darkness, each one calculated with machine precision. Velorian point defense systems activated, shredding several projectiles into molten debris. But many slipped through, too fast, too numerous. Ships ruptured. Carriers split down their central spines. One dreadnought lost propulsion and began drifting, hull punctured clean through from bow to stern. How are they achieving this targeting accuracy? Varix demanded. As if in answer, new alarm screamed. Cyber intrusion detected. Velorian tactical overlays flickered. Identification tags scrambled. Friendly vessels briefly registered as hostile before correcting, then flickering again. Our fleet coordination network is compromised, Tactical Prime said, disbelief creeping into his tone. They're inside our command lattice. Varix felt something unfamiliar coil in his chest. Not fear, irritation. Isolate affected systems. Switch to manual fire control. Even as he spoke, Earth's counteroffensive escalated. From orbit around the sun, thousands of previously inert satellites rotated, mirrors unfolding outward like mechanical petals. Solar energy concentrated along precise vectors, amplifying into coherent beams. A Velorian siege platform, positioned for planetary crust penetration, was struck by a focused solar lance. Its shields flared brilliantly, held for 3 seconds, then collapsed. The beam cut through its core, splitting the structure in half. 73 capital ships destroyed, sensors reported. Losses accelerating. Varix gripped the edge of the command dais. Return fire at all newly revealed installations. Target the moon. Target the asteroid platforms. Saturate. The Armada responded with disciplined fury. Plasma batteries roared. Graviton torpedoes curved toward the lunar surface. But as the torpedoes approached, space distorted. Localized gravitational anomalies rippled outward from Earth's orbital perimeter. Several torpedoes veered off course, dragged into artificial wells that bent their trajectories harmlessly away. They're manipulating microsingularity fields, Tactical Prime said, stunned. Admiral, this is not improvised defense. This is layered, premeditated war architecture. A fresh wave of kinetic strikes tore through the midline of the Velorian formation. 3 minutes had passed. Fleet integrity at 60%, an officer announced. Varix's jaw tightened. Impossible. Another alert. Admiral, our communications relays are lagging. Signal delay increasing. That is not possible within this proximity. It is occurring. Earth's cyberwarfare units were not merely disrupting. They were infiltrating, predicting, and countering in real time. Velorian targeting solutions recalculated seconds too late. Weapons discharged into empty space where human installations had repositioned moments earlier. Then something more insidious occurred. A Velorian cruiser fired upon what its systems marked as an asteroid platform. At the last instant, the identification flag shifted, friendly signature. The cruiser hesitated. The hesitation lasted half a second. A tungsten rod punched through its reactor core. Across the fleet, confusion multiplied. Admiral, Tactical Prime said quietly, we have lost 70% of forward assault ships. Varix turned slowly. Repeat, 70% in under 4 minutes. Silence filled the command deck, except for the distant hum of strain power systems. On the primary display, Earth rotated unchanged. No visible damage. No panic. Then a transmission cut through every Velorian frequency simultaneously, overriding encrypted channels with surgical precision. The human voice was calm, female, unhurried. You chose full force. Another kinetic strike obliterated a retreating destroyer. So did we. The words echoed in the stunned quiet of the bridge. Varix felt it then. Not irritation. Not anger. Recognition. This species had not been caught unprepared. They had been waiting. Order immediate strategic withdrawal, he commanded at last. Before the directive could propagate fully across the fractured fleet, space behind the Armada shimmered. Jump corridors, normally stable and reliable, collapsed into turbulent chaos. Artificial distortions severed escape vectors. FTL lanes destabilized, sensors cried. We cannot establish exit points. The Armada was trapped between Earth's orbital defenses and a wall of warped space-time. For minutes, 50 seconds, another wave of lunar fire, another line of ships erased. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Kale Varix watched as a Velorian invasion did not advance. It unraveled, and Earth had not even deployed a visible fleet. What the galaxy never saw. 4 minutes and 57 seconds into the invasion, the Velorian Empire understood something the rest of the galaxy had never bothered to learn. Humanity had been preparing for this day long before the first alien ship entered Sol. 40 years earlier, when Earth was formally introduced to the Galactic Council, humanity played its assigned role well. Newcomer, curious, slightly chaotic. They asked questions. They signed trade agreements. They exported culture, art, entertainment. They imported technologies carefully, never greedily. They listened far more than they spoke. And they studied every public archive, every military history the Council allowed them to access, every economic pattern of Velorian expansion. The Empire did not negotiate long-term coexistence. It expanded in waves. First, diplomatic pressure, then economic dependency, then stability enforcement, finally, full force integration. And always, always, the same fleet doctrine. Full deployment, overwhelming shock, psychological annihilation. Human analysts noticed something else. The Velorians attacked worlds they perceived as weak. Fragmented governments, defensive postures, limited retaliation capacity. Predators. Earth knew predators well. 3 decades before the invasion, the United Nations established an initiative so classified that even most national leaders believed it theoretical. The Aegis Protocol. Officially, it was a planetary disaster mitigation framework. Asteroid interception, solar flare shielding, climate stabilization. Unofficially, it was a weapon. Instead of constructing visible orbital defense rings that might alarm the galaxy, humanity embedded its systems within natural phenomena. The magnetosphere became a distributed shield array. Thousands of satellites, disguised as communications relays and weather monitors, formed quantum phase nodes capable of dispersing directed energy strikes. Asteroid mining operations concealed mass driver rail platforms. Lunar research stations housed kinetic accelerators powerful enough to rival capital ship cannons. Civilian AI development was restricted publicly after global debates, but privately, isolated quantum cores were trained exclusively for one purpose: predict invasion patterns. Humanity never assumed the Empire might attack. They assumed it would. Back in the present, Admiral Varix watched his Armada disintegrate in disciplined segments. 5 minutes, 12 seconds. Casualty projection, he demanded. 81% fleet loss if current engagement continues. Tactical Prime replied hoarsely. Target Earth's command infrastructure. Locate their primary control hub. We cannot, came the answer. Their systems are decentralized. No central node identified. Of course not. Earth had learned from its own violent history. Centralized power was vulnerable. Distributed resilience endured. Across the planet, no single nation commanded the defense. A synchronized lattice of autonomous military networks operated in parallel, each capable of continuing the fight independently. In Geneva, General Elena Marquez monitored the battle without celebration. Phase 2 authorization, an officer asked. She nodded once. Proceed. Near Mars orbit, something long assumed inactive shifted. A cluster of deep space probes, launched decades ago under the banner of exploration, altered trajectory simultaneously. Their outer shells detached, revealing compact gravitic distortion engines. They did not fire weapons. They adjusted space-time. Behind the Velorian fleet, the fabric of space twisted inward, forming a curved barrier that collapsed stable FTL corridors. Jump drives attempting activation overloaded instantly. Retreat was no longer an option. On the lunar surface, additional mass drivers rotated into position. Their firing solutions were no longer defensive. They were surgical. Each remaining Velorian capital ship was targeted not at its hull, but at its reactors, its command bridges, its propulsion cores. Clean penetrations. Instant neutralization. No prolonged suffering. No drawn-out spectacle. Efficient. 6 minutes for seconds. Admiral, Tactical Prime whispered, "We have lost 90% of the Armada." Varric stared at Earth. "They hid this," he said softly. "Yes, Admiral." "Why?" No one answered. But across the void, a new human transmission arrived, this time directed solely at the Vindicator Ascendant. "Velorian flagship, your fleet is neutralized. Power down weapons and prepare for boarding." Varric's eyes narrowed. "Boarding? They intend to take us intact," Tactical Prime said. The Admiral straightened. "Prepare remaining batteries." "We will not." A kinetic strike pierced the flagship's primary weapon array before he could finish. Another severed its forward shields. Warning klaxon screamed. Power fluctuated violently. "They're disabling, not destroying," Tactical Prime realized. Precisely. Within seconds, sleek black pods launched from hidden positions along Earth's orbital perimeter. Unlike the brute force of kinetic rods, these crafts moved with controlled precision, attaching magnetically to the flagship's hull. "Hull breach imminent," sensors reported. Varric stood unmoving as the first controlled explosions echoed through the corridor beyond the bridge. Armored figures entered moments later. Human soldiers clad in matte exosuits marked only with a single emblem: Earth. No insignia of nation. No individual decoration. Unified. Their weapons were steady, but not raised unnecessarily. One step forward, visor retracting to reveal calm brown eyes. "You are Admiral Kale Varric," she stated. He met her gaze without flinching. "I am. You will order your remaining ships to stand down." Varric almost laughed. "There are no remaining ships." Behind him, tactical displays confirmed it. 7 minutes, 42 seconds. The Velorian Armada, 12,000 vessels strong, had been reduced to drifting debris and powerless hulks. The soldier regarded him steadily. "You should understand something," she said. "We did not build this in response to you." Varric said nothing. "We built it because history taught us that someone would come." Outside the viewport, fragments of the once invincible fleet glimmered against the darkness. Humanity had not revealed its strength to intimidate the galaxy. It had concealed it to lure a predator into certainty. And then it had ended the hunt. The aftermath of 7 minutes. 7 minutes and 42 seconds. That was the official duration of the Battle of Sol. Across the Galactic Council's observation networks, the recording replayed in stunned silence. 12,000 Velorian warships entered the system in flawless formation. They initiated planetary suppression. They encountered resistance. Then, systematically, they ceased to exist. The galaxy had witnessed wars that lasted centuries. It had never witnessed one that ended before most civilizations could even issue a formal declaration. In the council chamber, projections of the Sol system hovered above the central dais. The debris field stretched in a glittering arc beyond Earth's moon. Twisted hulls, shattered engines, drifting fragments of what had once been the most feared armada in known space. "They annihilated them," one delegate whispered. "No," replied another quietly. "They neutralized them." It was an important distinction, because Earth had not pursued fleeing survivors. There were none. Within Velorian territory, The shockwave was not physical, but political. The Empire's doctrine relied on invincibility. Every conquered system believed resistance was futile because history said so. Fear was their most reliable weapon. Now history had changed. Outlying Velorian sectors lost contact with the Supreme Armada. Automated reports confirmed catastrophic fleet loss. Strategic command hubs demanded clarification. There was none. Within days, vassal species began transmitting encrypted messages, not to the Empire, but to Earth. Some were simple. Is it true? Others were desperate. If we rise, will you support us? Humanity did not respond immediately. On Earth, the atmosphere was different from what the galaxy expected. There were no parades, no triumphant military broadcasts. Cities resumed normal function within hours. News coverage remained steady, analytical, almost restrained. General Elena Marquez stood once more in the Orbital Defense Command Center, now illuminated by calm blue lighting instead of battle red. Debris stabilization, she asked. Underway. Operations replied. We're redirecting hazardous fragments into controlled solar trajectories. Survivor scans? Zero confirmed Velorian life signs. She nodded. The room was quiet, not celebratory, but reflective. We held, someone murmured. Marquez allowed herself a single breath of relief. Yes, she said. We held. Admiral Kale Varix sat in containment aboard his crippled flagship, now under joint Earth oversight. He had expected interrogation, threats, humiliation. Instead, he was given medical treatment for minor injuries and left alone with a viewport facing Earth. Blue oceans, white clouds, a world that had chosen not to burn. The door opened. The same human officer who had confronted him on the bridge entered. You are reviewing battle telemetry, she observed. Yes, Varix replied evenly. And he hesitated only briefly. You ended the war before it began. That was the intent. Varix studied her. Why not pursue expansion now, he asked. Your superiority is undeniable. The Empire is fractured. You could claim hundreds of systems before resistance forms. The human officer's expression did not change. We don't want your empire. Varix frowned. Power used is power wasted. Power misused, she corrected gently, is how empires fall. He had no immediate answer to that. 3 days after the battle, Earth transmitted a galaxy-wide broadcast. Every major polity, trade network, and independent world received it simultaneously. The speaker was not a general, nor a single national leader. It was a coalition address, representatives from every continent standing side by side. The message was simple. To the civilizations of this galaxy, we defended our home. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek tribute. If you are oppressed and seek sovereignty, we will support your right to determine your future. But understand this clearly. We will not tolerate aggression against our world or those under our protection. We prefer peace. But if war comes to our skies, we will finish it before you understand it began. The transmission ended without flourish. No anthem. No threat display. Just certainty. Within weeks, Velorian vassal systems began declaring independence. Some transitions were peaceful, others were chaotic. In several regions, Earth deployed humanitarian fleets, ships previously hidden within its defensive network, now revealed as carriers of medical aid and reconstruction supplies rather than weapons. The galaxy watched carefully. Human ships did not plant flags. They helped rebuild infrastructure. They offered defensive alliances, mutual, not subordinate. Trust was not granted immediately, but it grew, because Earth had demonstrated something rare: restraint. Months later, children stood along coastlines and city rooftops, staring at a clear night sky. The debris field beyond the moon had thinned, redirected safely into the sun or recycled for materials. Only faint streaks remained as reminders of the day. The stars themselves seemed to fracture. Teachers would one day explain the event in classrooms. Historians would debate its implications. Strategists across the galaxy would rewrite their doctrines. But for those children, it was simpler. The sky had turned black, and then it had cleared. In a quiet observation chamber aboard a council station, an elder delegate summarized the new galactic reality to a stunned assembly. "We misjudged them," she said softly. "We saw division and assumed weakness. We saw youth and assumed naivety." She gestured to the frozen image of the Velorian fleet collapsing under precise kinetic fire. They were neither. A pause. They were waiting. On Earth, beneath peaceful skies, the Aegis protocol remained active. The shield lattice still hummed quietly within the magnetosphere. Lunar mass drivers rested in standby. Asteroid platforms returned to dormant camouflage. Humanity did not dismantle its defenses. It did not advertise them either, because predators still existed in the dark between stars. But now the galaxy understood a fundamental truth. Earth was not a soft target. It was a line, and when the Empire crossed it at full force, humanity erased them in minutes. Not out of rage, not out of conquest, but because that was the cost of threatening their home.